What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another episode, guys. And in today's episode, we wanted to talk about 2 games into the preseason, only short amount of time, Derek, until the regular season. There were some things that we wanted to talk about that we wanted to see from the Indianapolis Colts. You know, we kind of looked at all these different positions, and honestly, we could probably talk about each and every one of these positions if we wanted to. But we kind of narrowed it down to kind of 6 things that we've seen through preseason, training camp, things of that nature, things we want to see before week 1 of the 2022 season. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start by probably the most noted thing on the offense right now, that wide receiver battle outside of the top 4. Or right now, number 5 and potentially number 6, depending how many of the Colts carry. You know, the question is, who are going to be those guys who are going to step it up, right? And we saw it in the preseason. 2 guys did step up in Michael Strawn and Desmond Patman, who both had really, really good games with Sam Ehlinger at quarterback. What are your thoughts on kind of this wide receiver position? Definitely a position that's been talked about a lot, been heavily debated. There's a bunch of different guys kind of going for this position. Give me your overall thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, what you saw last week, especially against the Lions, it really does make a good argument for however many guys you want to keep on here. Michael Strawn having a spectacular game against the Detroit Lions, and then of course Desmond Patman having a phenomenal game against the Detroit Lions. So, you really have a bunch of different guys here that you really could see making it. And you're right, it all depends on what do they do with Hines? What exactly is the game plan moving forward? Because, if you leave one of these guys on the practice squad, then you're running the off chance of, one of them potentially getting signed by another team. And if you keep seeing Strawn and Patman playing the way that they are, then, I mean, at some point, somebody might end up taking a chance on them. And, I've seen Desmond Patman a little bit on special teams as well. So leads me more to think that he will end up making the wide receiver 5 because, a bunch of these other wide receivers that we've mentioned, a couple of wide receivers have been cut already. DJ Montgomery, Michael Young being 2 of them. And I'm sure more will follow here in the next 2 weeks. But Patman, I think for sure at this point is a lock. If I'm going to be completely honest, at this point, it's just a matter of whether or not we see Michael Strawn actually do it. And I think it's all going to come down to, how does this next week work for him? Does he get some time in that next preseason game against Tampa Bay and continue to show more of what we've been seeing? Because, we had the same topic last year, about him excelling in training camp and during the preseason, but just never got any time, was always a healthy scratch. And here, could it possibly be the same thing? I don't know. But at this point, Michael Strawn is showing once again, he definitely deserves a shot.
Absolutely. And then it's crazy. We're not even a week removed from him being off of the PUP list, and he's already been making a big impression. So, the fact that really he had no time in this offense, in the offseason to do anything, and he just comes back and is just lighting it up. I mean, that obviously speaks to just the talent that he has. And people seem to forget last year when Michael Strawn came in, he hadn't played football in over a year, right? He didn't play the year prior because I believe he opted out that year, if I'm not mistaken, or something of that nature. He didn't play for a year. So he still had a lot to learn. I'm sure he grew a ton as a receiver. He has learned a ton under Reggie Wayne, this offseason and stuff. And so, look, I'm not saying that Michael Strawn's going to go out there and be the next Reggie Wayne or Marvin Harrison or anything like that. But I think you can't argue with what he's already started to do, because he was doing it, what he was doing last year with literally no experience at the wide receiver level at the NFL, and so that for me is just like, wow. I mean, if this dude can do that, just coming right off the PUP list, jumping in like he hasn't missed a beat and make that kind of impression early on. I mean, I think for me, that's really worthy of, getting that potential wide receiver 5 position, because how much better can he get just being in this system a little bit longer, getting some more game reps and doing those things? You're right. The Tampa Bay game, I think, is going to be big for him, and kind of seeing, okay, he's done it in a game. Can he do it again? Can he continue to stack on days, in good games back to back? And if he can, I think he has a realistic opportunity to keep 5, and I think we talked about it before, Derek, like, We thought the Colts were going to keep five, prior to the Ogletree injury. Now without him, potentially the Colts only keep three tight ends there, and maybe they keep six wide receivers. I could see that being a real scenario, especially now with Strawn starting to come on. So all that to say, I'm really encouraged with what I've seen from him so far. And, I'm hoping that he just continues to build on it, because I really do think from a talent standpoint, he's got it there, man. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he can do it all for you as a wide receiver. He's got the frame to be a really good NFL wide receiver and to box out guys, right? And do those things that those big body wide receivers need to do. And now he has Reggie Wayne teaching him, one of the best receivers ever. Like, that's huge for me. So yeah, I'm really encouraged with what I've seen from Strawn so far, and Patman, a guy who's really been quiet in camp. We haven't heard a lot from him, but yeah, he's really started to emerge too. So for both these wide receivers, I think I can clump them in the same category. They both showed out on Saturday. Can they do it again? Can they have great practices? The Colts get back to practice tomorrow. So can they get back, and can they continue to just kind of stack days on each other, and have good performances? If they can, I really see a scenario where the Colts end up keeping six wide receivers. And especially with Patman playing special teams, I think that certainly helps his favor to make the final 53, man. We'll have to see what they do, though. That's the big question. How many do they keep? So I just honestly don't think you can risk losing Mike Strawn, to the practice squad, and then him getting claimed by another team.
And then people have been making that same argument with Sam Ellinger, right? We've been seeing what Sam Ellinger's been doing. And, for as scarce as quarterback talent is in the league, when you see a guy like Sam Ellinger going out and doing what he's doing, albeit against second and third stringers, but nevertheless, he's dominating second and third stringers right now. So, you're at that point where it's like, how much longer do you think you can keep him in his spot before somebody might actually want to take a chance on him?
Yep. And for me, I'm not personally ready to take that risk. So I think it makes more sense to keep these guys on the roster than to risk, them clearing waivers and things like that. Because if they're going to continue to do this, I would much rather just keep them on the roster and not risk that chance of losing them. So yeah, talking about the wide receiver position right now, I think those guys are 5 and 6, however that would look. I think certainly they're locked in there as those two guys that are competing for those spots. But let's continue talking about some offensive weapons. Primarily, I talked about Ogletree, the other young tight ends. Outside of Mo Alley Cox, there's a lot of unprovenness right now, Derek. Kylan Granson is your tight end 2. And right now, Jelani Woods is your tight end 3. So we didn't see anything from Jelani Woods on Saturday at all. He didn't get targeted, didn't make a catch, didn't make an impact. And I kind of asked the question to Matt yesterday, how much of that do you think is Jelani Woods' fault versus how much do you think that was just kind of schemed up? I don't know. We don't know. We can never really say. But all that to say, these young tight ends, I want to see more from them to elicit a little bit more confidence going into this year. What say you regarding this young tight end position outside of Mo?
Yeah, I mean, and even with Mo, people are still wanting to see more from Mo Alley Cox than what we have been seeing, because his play right now is not going to be standard for what you want from your tight end group, right? So at the end of the day, you want to see the best from him, but we haven't seen at his peak yet, at least what we think. And then obviously Kylan Granson only a couple years into the league now, and he's just trying to find his way. And you're right. We don't know anything about Jelani at this point. Like we've been saying it that the Colts need to try to get him involved to see where he's at currently. And I mean, the fact that they didn't even attempt to get him involved in last Saturday's game might just be a wake-up call to all Colts fans saying that Jelani is just not there yet where the Colts thought he could be, at least yet. Obviously a long, long time for a career to get going around. I mean, he definitely has, like you said, with Strawn, the physical attributes to be able to do certain things, but obviously putting it all together right now, Jelani is just nowhere close, because apparently if he was anywhere close, he'd be getting more involved in the offense the way that they're going right now. But right now, like, he has not been the answer to anyone at all. So I don't know, it does concern me with the fact that, all of us had these high hopes of Jelani maybe even being tight end number 2, behind Mo Alley Cox this season. And we have seen very little of Jelani Woods in the preseason at all. So, and by far and away has been the least contributing tight end in our entire tight end group. I mean, even Jacobson has been more utilized in this Colts offense through training camp and in preseason than Jelani Woods has. So I'm questioning what his role is going to actually be, if there's even a role for him at all when the season starts, because it just doesn't seem like somebody that's getting very little usage in preseason is going to be in any way used in our starting offense this year. So a lot of questions there when it comes to Jelani and the rest of this group.
And I mean, there's been some people, and I don't blame them, who have said, hey, throwing around the idea of maybe signing a veteran tight end at this point, just because of the improvements. It's a little bit scary, honestly. Like, do you need, another veteran in there? Or do you believe in these guys? And do you take your lumps with these guys and you grow with these guys? There's been debate back and forth on that. I'll leave that up to the comment section to kind of see what you guys think regarding the tight end position. But nonetheless, we need to see some more clearly from this young tight end room, with or without Mo Alley Cox in it. So, all right, let's continue on talking about this offense. Kind of the last thing we want to talk about with this offense is the new guys, the new additions, the new starters, quote unquote, for this season. Left tackle Matt Pryor, who Frank Reich just named the starting left tackle for week 1, and then right guard Danny Pinter. Both these guys have, it's just difficult to say for both these guys, because at certain points, both these guys have looked solid, but at some points, both these guys have struggled as well. I don't know if I'd say underwhelming, but I think we came to expect, especially with Danny Pinter, a little bit more from him, considering how well he played last year. And it seems like he's struggled so far. What are your thoughts on kind of some of these guys, these young, they both are pretty young, and new starters on this offensive line?
Yeah, I think there's been enough to show that there is some room for concern in a way that, not necessarily Matt Pryor, because he's playing in an all new position, and the fact that, he's going against guys like Yannick Ngakoue in practice. Uh, I think Matt Pryor is going to continuously get better as the season goes along. I'm not as entirely worried about that particular situation. I'm also a little bit more concerned with Danny Pinter at right guard. Been hearing that, he has not looked as good as what we have thought of him from last season. We knew that he came in and replaced Ryan Kelly when he was out for a month. And we ended up, seeing Danny Pinter really shine, right? Like, he was doing really well. And we thought, oh, well, he's just going to continue to climb in that apparatus. But even even when the Colts starters were in for the first week against Buffalo, we couldn't run the football there. And then sure enough, even in the backups now, this isn't Danny Pinter's fault, but even in the backups, the Colts still can't run the football. So it's become very concerning with the fact that this offensive line has not granted, Jonathan Taylor's not running the football. So obviously, how Jonathan Taylor runs with the football is going to be completely different when Indianapolis actually gets him out there for week 1. The stats are probably going to change, and how the offense looks is probably going to change a little bit because Jonathan Taylor is just that elite. But it is a little concerning that, you hear Danny Pinter getting blown up in the joint practices a few times by some of the Lions defensive linemen. He didn't look too great in the game against Buffalo. So, I just haven't seen any of that improvement that we thought we would see from him, as he looked really good last season when he stepped in. And now you thought you were comfortable enough with him taking a starting role. So far in preseason, that has not looked the way that you wanted it to. So it is a little concerning, and you hope that maybe it's just because he's relishing into a new role, because he's never been a starter. He's always just been a guy that's been a backup that's now going to become a starter. More emphasis on him now. We hope it gets better, because, if him and Pryor are struggling, then this offensive line is going to have a lot of work to do.
And maybe this is too premature and too crazy of me to say, but Derek, Will Fries has looked really good in the preseason. He's looked really good in the games he's played. I get it. It's been against twos. But if Danny Pinter would continue to struggle, would there be a potential, and if Will Fries continues to kill it, what if Will Fries becomes your right guard? And Danny Pinter goes back to that reserve center role. Maybe that's a little bit premature, I admit, but all that to say, is Danny Pinter a guy that more is like he's good as a key backup, but he's never going to be a good starter. That I think that's kind of where Danny Pinter finds himself right now. That's kind of the narrative around him is he looked really good last year when he was asked to be the starter for a couple weeks. But, he always knew, and the Colts always knew that he was going to eventually become the backup again, right? And so, where's Danny Pinter stand as far as that goes? And that's kind of the question I have. Is he, more of that key, guy that can fill in where need be, or is he going to be, ascend himself into a really good NFL starter? I think that's kind of the crossroads he's at right now.
Yep. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm introducing our new sponsor, Homefield, a premium collegiate apparel brand out of Indianapolis that has incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Homefield, being a local brand to Indianapolis, is partnering with the Indianapolis Colts to bring you a new collection of Colts apparel. This is Homefield's first NFL collection. They're super excited to be involved with the Indianapolis Colts, and we're excited to help promote their new designs. They have 6 new designs. They have a hooded sweatshirt, crew neck, 2 different tees, joggers, and a jacket. Now, if I say so myself, I'm definitely going to be rocking the sweatshirt and the joggers, guys, because they look extremely comfortable, and I'm definitely going to need them for the fall and winter season. It's the perfect collection to have for you guys to kick off the NFL season. It is going to be launching August 27th at 12 p.m. Eastern. So be on the lookout for it. And if this is already passed, make sure to go check out the Homefield site and be able to get yours today. New customers can get 15% off their first purchase from Homefield with the code BRINGTHEJUICE at checkout at homefieldapparel.com. Make sure to go check out their website, guys, and catch your Colts apparel.
All right. Let's move over to the defense. Let's talk about, you talked about how bad the offensive line last week against the Lions looked. I mean, let's talk about the defensive line because they didn't look much better at stopping the run, especially those young guys in the defensive interior. Again, guys, these were all the backups, but still, it is concerning because outside of your 2 starters, you hope some of these guys especially would shine against the Lions, and they really didn't. Guys like Curtis Brooks, guys like Eric Johnson, these guys that we really expected to have really good games, they really didn't at all, Derek, especially against the run.
Yeah, it was extremely saddening to see the fact that the Colts gave up 150 rushing yards to the Detroit Lions. That is bad. And it really wasn't as much on the edge guys. I thought that obviously the edge guys didn't do a great job in stopping the run, but they were certainly far from the biggest problem. And it was mainly the guys in the middle. And, when we were talking about, I was seeing it right before my eyes. I just saw, guys like Eric Johnson and Curtis Brooks and a couple other guys in there just getting absolutely just blown off the block. And then the linebackers would end up getting blocked at the second level. And then the Lions would get 10, 15 yards every carry up to that point, and there were several times also when, unfortunately, there were several times when there was some good chances for tackles for loss in the backfield, and the corners coming off the edges couldn't make the tackles and ended up giving them a 15-yard run instead of a 3-yard loss. So that sort of stuff also comes into factor. But, we were thinking of, Eric Johnson, Curtis Brooks, RJ McIntosh, a couple of these guys really stepping up in a big way to be able to provide some needed rest for DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart this year. And what we're seeing from them right now, especially in the run defense category, it's not very helpful right now. And it looks very concerning because, if you're the Colts defense has already been known that they're taking more of an approach at rushing the passer, not stopping the run this year with the signings of Yannick Ngakoue and things of that nature. But what the Colts are trying to do now, they're trying to get better at the rushing department, at least from passing. But right now it's just not working in the run defense, and it's looked bad for a couple weeks now. It did not look anywhere near that bad against Buffalo, but I mean, they looked atrocious against the Lions. And again, it's the backups, but Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, and those boys, they need to rest at some point. Right now, I'm not feeling insanely confident in what our backups are showing right now to provide them any kind of rest, because that rest is just going to cost us drives at this point, but just by the looks of it.
Yeah. So what we want to see from them is a couple guys having some nice bounce back games, especially in the run department. Just want to feel a little bit more confident that, like, when Buckner or Grover Stewart goes out, it's not going to be just getting blown off the line every play, because these guys aren't going to be going against backups. They're going to be going against really good offensive lines, and so I want to see just from that department, one or two of these guys really step it up here in week number 3 against Tampa Bay and really, like, have a nice rebound game, look good in practice, do those things to instill a little bit more confidence in this defensive line room for the backups. So especially the interior. So definitely want to see that. Another thing I want to talk about here is the cornerback 5 position right now up in the air still. Really felt like, there's been a couple guys that have looked good. Dallas Flowers, obviously my guy. Tony Brown had a really nice game as well, had an interception. But, it kind of seems like one week, one guy has a good game, one week, another guy has a good game. But nobody's really stood out as the guy that's going to be the number 5. I thought it was going to be Flowers, and it ended up being Tony Brown. So, like, it begs the question, maybe similar with the tight end room, Derek, do the Colts consider going and getting a veteran for that number 5 corner? What are your thoughts on this position battle and what
Well,
you
I
want to see
think
from it?
that when it comes to the number 5 corner, I thought that Dallas Flowers actually looked really good in the last game. I think that the number 1 corner that you saw in the game against the Lions was Tony Brown, obviously, but I thought Dallas Flowers had some really good plays. Had 3 straight tackles on one drive where he was just getting involved in everything. I still think Dallas Flowers is the man to beat. I still think he is, but obviously, when you're talking about guys like Tony Brown, and then you still have to consider Marvell Tell in the equation, it definitely doesn't make it easy for him. But I mean, for the number 5 corner, for me specifically, I still think Dallas Flowers is leading that push right now. But in regards to this, I mean, it's anyone's game at this point. I really don't know who's in the lead, but I still like what I saw from Dallas Flowers. In my opinion, he's still the number 5 corner.
You just want to see him take another step and clearly cement himself as a number 5. Then I think you'd feel a lot better about it where it is right now, So that's kind of just something for me. And then talking about also the special teams, I think this kind of goes twofold with obviously the kicking battle. We think it's not really a battle anymore. It's more hot rods. Can he just, continue to be consistent and make with the kicks that he needs to make, basically? But also to a different degree, the kick coverage for the Colts, this is surprising because they've usually been really stout. They have struggled the first couple weeks of the preseason. What do you want to see from both these kind of positions within a position here, Derek, regarding the special teams?
Punt return has not been a concern for me, but obviously, like your kickoff coverage, I mean, the first 2 kickoffs that you gave to the Lions, their return team had 97 yards on their first 2. And it wasn't just like, oh, the one was like an 80 yarder and the next one was a 15 yarder. No, this was each time, each one ran for over 40 yards. Like, that is not something you can continue to have happen. I know, again, backups, whatever. But I mean, the Colts pride themselves on special teams. And the fact that over like the span of all of this, like even against Buffalo, had a couple kick returns that went past the 40-yard line. This is not Colts football, like on special teams. This is not what the Colts pride themselves on. So it was very shocking to see them, and something they take such pride in, just struggle so bad. Like, it was terrible to watch. I was like begging them to just almost begging us to just kick it out of bounds at that point. Because if you kick it out of bounds, they wouldn't have had as good a field position. Like, that's how bad it was getting. So, like, it's definitely concerning because, again, it's not the starters, But some of those guys will have to play special teams this year. And if that's what it's going to look like, this team's not going to win games based off of giving up field position where the opposing team is starting at the 50-yard line every time.
Absolutely. So, guys, those are some things that we want to see kind of, figured out or fixed or whatever it would be, or some guys emerging. Let us know your thoughts about all these different things in the comments below. That'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all your support. And as always, guys, go Colts.